Good afternoon, everyone. David Dubine from the Adapt 2030 channel. Today I have with me Ronnie McMullen from Get the Tea. We wanted to discuss different changes in the weather that are going to be occurring during the grand solar minimum. Also, as I have been saying for over a year and a half now, we're going to need to get ready for price increases in the crops, as well as mold, blight, and different kind of rain diseases, wet diseases across the crops globally. This is going to affect the nutrition content. As you know, wheat this year, the protein content is lower, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. The French wheat, the protein content was so low that they couldn't even send it to the millers to be refined for flour to use in factory produced products or any types of bread for human consumption. It was all sent off for animal feed. So as this continues down the line, we can start to see mounting losses coming again and again. How is this going to affect nutrition? And how are you going to get your body ready for this? Because when it comes, it's going to be here in a flash, literally a flash. And everybody will be looking for the same types of, shall we say, solutions to cleanse their body and get their body ready in preparation. But can everybody do it at the exact same time? Right now is time to be thinking about that. Ronnie, I'll let you introduce yourself with the Life Change tea that I've been drinking, as well as the D365.
Well, David, thanks for having me on the show, and it's a pleasure. I have a passion for what you do. Obviously, I don't do what you do, but it really, this is, to me, one of the greatest crimes that's ever taken place is what they're doing to our weather. And the fact there's somebody out there reporting it and saying this is what's going on and this is this and this is that. I mean, I just think that's absolutely excellent. Obviously, your subscribers are awake and they care about what's going on. So it's very exciting to be on the show.
Thank you. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while because you have a lot of insight about the nutrition side of everything. And if we go back into the late 1700s, that was one of the things that really brought about a lot of demise of some of the populations in Europe was a sickness. And then if you go back to the 1340s, you'll find every time there's a grand solar minimum that it's not so much the cold that really gets to people and wears down a society, but it's more the crops that are being grown in the fields. The growing seasons are either too short because the spring is much longer because the winter cool just extends into the spring. There's excessive rains and they can't plant in the exact time that they were used to for centuries before that. And the mold and the blight with the decreased UV from the sun. And every time I read back through history, I find the same thing. The immune system of the people at the time got really weak, which allowed all those diseases to pervade and invade the societies of the time. And that's what I really wanted to talk to you about, is getting our bodies ready for what I see in the future, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now, literally right now in the next couple of years, this kicking off into where food price rises are going to get so high that people are going to start substituting cheaper foods. And when that happens, if your traditional food that you're eating rises 3, 4, 5 times, you're going to switch over to something cheaper. Some people will, and that's going to decrease the amount of nutrition, nutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, etc. in their body.
Well, this has been going on for a little while, and they and them have been testing us, and this is why you see McDonald's with a 99-cent meal, or you see Taco Bell with a 69, 79-cent meal. You're going to get a whole burrito for 79 cents or 99 cents. And what is in that burrito? What nutrition is in that burrito? What nutrition's in that baby burger? And really, when you have something microwaved and there was hardly any nutrition to start with, and then you microwave it, you're kind of guaranteed you get nothing. And so this is something where, I saw a special where, people were saying, hey, I can't afford to go to the store and have good nutrients. I can't afford to go organic. I can't afford to get good beef, whatever, vegetables, what have you. So we go and I take the family to McDonald's. We eat the Happy Meals, the 99-cent dollar menu, the Taco Bells and the Del Tacos. And, there's all the different places that you can have. And it's not really even meat. It's kind of a meat mixture, with a lot of it being flour and gluten and what have you. And this is all based on financial end. And this is something that where our food prices, yes, they've gone up. They've probably gone up by, maybe 100% in the past 2-3 years. But this is nothing compared to what's going to happen, as you said, as the weather is changing. So as we see that, the nutrients obviously are lower, and we have to be fed in our body nutrients for the immune system, which is like our firewall, to stay up. And if we don't feed ourselves the nutrients, and this is even to the point of trace minerals, you're finding a lot of disease taking place because we're missing trace minerals. And one of the reasons we're missing trace minerals is because we've used all the garbage and we put petroleum products into our soils, and our soils, they're exhausted. And so what happens is, between getting poisoned with petroleum products and being used, there's supposed to be years that you just let the ground go fallow, and they don't. They just keep using it. So what we're seeing is what I call a freight train, and it's coming. It is full bore, full speed, but it's all of a sudden there's going to be no tracks. It's just going to off the cliff. And that's what I see coming. And I think it plays a huge part, because this biggest crime that I've ever seen take place, which is putting the chemicals, the aluminum, the barium, and many other things inside of these planes that drop right before a storm, enhance the storm, lower the storm. I don't think they'd necessarily create the storm. That'd probably be down your road, but they change the storm. And so they want flooding. They want, Central California, you look at what they're doing with the crops, and there's huge drought. And to me, it's the man-made drought. California's man-made drought. And what we're seeing is prices of property in the Central Valley, in the Fresno, Visalia area, going very inexpensive because there's no water. They can't do anything. So they and them are buying all this property for nothing, 2 cents on the dollar. And they're exploiting. They're just, the farmers are going broke. And so we're going to have, with less acreage of food, what is that going to change the food prices? And Monsanto, obviously been a big player in this, is also doing a lot of damage, because the organic crops really are not as organic as they say they are, and I'm not against that, but they're really not, because when they crop dust or they put pestilence or what have you on a crop, they could have an organic crop right next door, and next thing you know, it's got chemicals. So I think we're in trouble, David.
Yeah, I'm following with you. Hamaker's work. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Hamaker. Back in World War II, they noticed that when they cut through the Black Forest, that the granite dust that was dispersed along the roadside, it was kind of dying off anyway, but when they went through and built some new roads through there, that the granite dust had remineralized literally the soil. So coming back into the micronutrients, our bodies are very much like plants. It takes those micronutrients in order to cap something else inside the body to activate or use proteins and the free radicals and everything that keeps us healthy. But remineralizing the soil, I have a lot of people ask me, what are some cheap solutions that you can do? Well, instead of using petrochemical fertilizers and pesticides, why don't you go out and buy a 20-pound bag of granite dust, throw that all over the ground where you're growing your vegetables or whatever it might be, roses. I know a lot of flower farmers that have great results with this. I've spoken to many people who just have amazing 3 times, 4 times yield on that same amount of land you're talking about, just because they've remineralized the soil. And with the granite dust, if it's with a plant or a tree, just like our bodies, we also need to be remineralized to have the best yield.
Well, and we are running low on trace minerals. Most people don't know that. And there's a lot of people that take supplements, but something else that needs to be known. We at the Tea, we try as hard as we can to make sure everything is organic. And if it's an extract, it can't really be labeled organic. But we are all non-GMO. We do everything we can to have the most natural product given to the customer. And then obviously even to the point of financial, we try to price it to where the consumer is able to do this. And instead of, sometimes bottles of stuff's like $45 and, you go, oh my gosh, you can't, it's 30-day supply, wow, we try very hard not to do that unless it's a product that just literally has some, in what they're doing too, this is kind of interesting, is some of the products there are actually putting, what do I want to say, not a copyright, but they're putting a patent on it. And when they do that, then you have to pay through the nose like you would a pharmaceutical product. And that just disturbs me. It just very much disturbs me. So we're seeing they and them also enter the supplement world, but we try very hard to put natural products, organic, non-GMO products, so that the people are getting the best of the best of the best. We deal with, people will notice our tea is probably the number one seller. It's not probably, it is the number one seller of our company. It is the backbone of our company. But we've now enriched ourselves to have other supplements, and not just vitamin A, B, C, D. We don't really get into that. We have certain ones, yes. I get into the wild stuff, like the trees, the 4 trees, very important. Pine bark, okay, the pine tree, pine bark extract. You wouldn't believe the benefits of what it does. Cinnamon, big thing for diabetes and many other issues. The olive tree obviously has been a major player for many, many years, and something that a lot of people don't know about, but it's the moringa tree, which is grown over in India and Africa, and mind-blowing product and how many things that it does for you. So I go after that, or we go after formulas that try to kick certain issues you might have with your body, and we try to take care of people that way. So the tea is a colon cleanser, and so is the D365. They're the same kind of product, so you don't want to take them together. You can, but if you have one or the other, it will detox you, and colon cancer is like number 2 or number 3 on the cancer list. So if you take care of your colon, you're basically taking care of your body, which is also taking care of your immune system. And people don't realize that it's probably, I'm going to guess here, probably 70-80% of people have an autoimmune disease, and this is their firewall breaking down. And this is really part of the chemtrails, breaking down the firewall, so that any kind of virus, any kind of bacteria, any kind of anything come down the road, you're sick. You're immediately sick. And that's what they want. And they want you sick. They want you going to the doctor. They want you going to their health care, which is funny. It shouldn't even be called health care. It should be called something about making money, I guess. And of course, that whole system is kind of unraveling like a cheap suit. So there's a lot of stuff going on, Dave. I mean, this could be a very long conversation. So we just try very hard to combat the major system so that people have a choice, instead of saying, okay, I'm sick with the flu, or I have high blood pressure, and and I've got to take a statin drug for my cholesterol, and we try to say there's another way you can beat this. And for me, I'm kind of the guinea pig. I've had issues with my body. Unfortunately, everybody might think, oh, Ronnie's been, he's been healthy his whole life. No, I was an abuser to my body in the early years. I had no idea what was going on. I would drink a 32-ounce Coke, and I wouldn't think twice about it. And I'd have maybe a couple, 2 or 3 of those a day. Or I'd have, 5 or 6 cans of Coke a day. I was a Coca-Cola-holic. And so, I had that. And of course, I'm kind of a sweet nut. I never was a hard candy guy, but I, Hostess pies and Twinkies, yee-haw. Life is good. A greasy burger with French fries, yoo-hoo. I just had a great time. Well, that great time, you pay. You pay the piper. And that was actually, if you roll the time back, that was in a time where there was still some nutrients in the food.
Yeah, it was healthier. Junk food was healthier in the 80s and 90s than it is now.
Yes.
Or even the 70s and 80s, it would be considered sort of a nutritious meal compared to what you're going to get right now.
Absolutely. They, in the 70s and the 80s, you get a McDonald's burger, and, and not that McDonald's is great. They would fry the burger right in front of you, and then put it on the bun, and it goes to you. There was no Nuke Labs, there was no, glowing burgers, none of that stuff at that time. And now everything's changed. I think there's only a couple burger places in the chain market that are left. It's In-N-Out and Habit that are actually still frying the burgers and, making it right there. But most everybody else hasn't. What I call the nuke world, they're putting the microwaves and whatever, and that just toasts your nutrients. I mean, 0 nutrients. And if you can be a microwave zombie, you're going to be a dead zombie probably by the time you're 60.
Yeah, and I wanted to jump back a little bit a couple minutes ago when you talked about chemtrails. For those of you listening, the actual word for it is stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. And before it was some kind of trigger word, conspiracy word that people would use. But now it's NASA's out talking about this. U.S. Air Force is coming out, owning the weather, talking about how they're using all these patents to actually put this in play. And it's
Yep.
so in your face right now that they're all coming out saying, we are doing this without your approval and there's nothing you can do. And they had
Right.
so many magazines coming out and so many articles that it is no longer is it even considered not real. It is so in your face now and you can see it everywhere. And once you know what you're looking for, you see it. And these metals that are coming out have a detrimental effect on the plants that uptake those metals, micrometals or nanoparticulates into the system itself. So you're actually ingesting that from the soils that are coming through. Now, I know aluminum is the third most prevalent metal in our crust. And I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot there anyway, but when you're adding these nanoparticulates minerals on top of that, it's just unbelievable what happens with the uptake on that. How do you
Well,
cleanse that out of your body?
this is affecting our body because it's in our air, it's in our water system, and so we're breathing it in, we're drinking it in, and that's what they want. They and them want us to do that. And again, they can think conspiracy, and I'm sure your subscribers don't, but we try to share this with other people that are still listening to people like Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, and so on and so forth. And these are the kind of the zombie people that they're wanting to wake up, but they haven't quite got there yet. You'll never see these major talk show hosts cover the stuff that David Devine covers. It's not going to ever happen. You're not going to see geoengineering, climate change. They use these words like they'll use not geoengineering or chemtrails, but they'll use climate change, kind of like God's just changing all the weather. He's hokey pocus up there or something. They make it really sound pretty low level frequency.
But they forget about the cycles in it. They never talk about the natural cycles. If you look at the Greenland ice core data going back 2,000 years, it is a seesaw up and down, and the temperatures have gone up as much as 4°C and then back down again. When there were no SUVs, there were no factories. It's a natural cycle again and again. And when the Jovian planets line up in a certain way with a parallel pattern, you get this repeating cool cycle that comes for about 30 years. We're entering another one right now. Last year was the first year. The year is going to intensify, and as we go through 2018-19, what we are talking about right now, the food price rises and the availability of food. Not only that, but when the economic system starts to crumble, the just-in-time delivery system is going to crumble as well. So your access to these foods, you might think, well, I could just go down to the supermarket any day I want and buy millet, sorghum, amaranth, or whatever. But maybe that delivery chain breaks down and that actual supply coming in on the forward contract, you're not going to be able to get it because who's paying out cash for a container of something? Everybody's going
Exactly.
30, 45, 60 out, if not longer.
I think it's something that's interesting too is, I'll have people ask me when they buy, they'll say, how long does your product last? That's a big one. If you notice the foods that we eat, okay, in the old days, I was in grocery when I was a pup, and working in a grocery store, you could have something in a can, okay, it doesn't matter if it's a number 10 can or whatever the can was, whatever size it was, and you could have that product, and it would be 5 to 10 years old, and it would be good to go. You could open that can 10 years later, and it'd be ready to go. That is not true today. You're lucky if you can get a year. And so that's because of whether it's the nutrients in the food, I'm not sure, whether they are just putting certain things in there so that it goes bad, I don't know. But the point of this is there is no food storage unless you buy all the scary underground woo stuff. There is no food storage. And so they want that. So people say, hey, well, on the nutrients and the supplements, how long does it last? And we have had the tea stored for as long as 20 years, and it still runs beautifully. And I think the same thing you could probably get, and again, it's up to you. It's a lot of different changes, your environment, whatever. But you can get 5 to 10 years time out of all the supplements if the seal's not broken. So this is something and I'm not saying to stock up, but on the same token, read between the lines. If you carry this product and get a hold of it little by little for the next 3 to 6 months and stock up a little bit, then when those food prices, or if the trees fail, which they and them want too, they want the trees to fail, So, freeze, whatever the case may be. So now supplements will not be there because all of the pharmaceuticals are synthetic. They're not plant-based. So they make those till the cows come home. But when it comes to the supplements, if you don't have any trees and plants, then you got nothing. That means the prices of supplements will probably double or triple, just like everything else. Who would have ever thought that you'd be paying anywhere between $7 and $10 a pound for meat? That was just unheard of. I remember if it was $3 or $4 a pound back in the day, you were like, "Oh my God, that must be filet mignon," And now hamburger is $3 to $4 a pound. And that's just for the cheap stuff, and this is for the pink slime. So things have changed, David, and hopefully, you've got some YouTubers here that are on top of it. They know this stuff, and this is information they're going to want to hear, and they're going to want to spread with, unfortunately, a lot of the real truth we can't spread because people are still in zombie zone. And that's really a scary tactic, really a scary truth. But as long as the mass media is there, there's going to be the zombie zone, and they're just going to be like, "Oh, let me watch a football game, or let me watch the newest movie that says the world's going to end. That's where I want to be." It's like, okay, well, we should be trying to do something about what they're doing to our skies. That's the biggest crime of the century, in my opinion.
Yeah, do you ever watch Mark Dice when he goes around in California and asks people simple questions, like who was the founders of the country? He just asks simple questions to people that are United States citizens, but they don't even have the answer to the simplest of questions. And I watch these videos sometimes, always short, like 2 to 3 minutes, and I shake my head, and that's impossible. So I see this whole, segment of the populace that they just don't care. That I just really can't get what is going on. It seems like you're talking about the zombification. Is it in the food supply? Because everything is planned obsolescence now. Everywhere you look, it's always meant to break in the next couple of minutes, weeks, or months. You have to buy a new one.
Yep. And we wonder why we have so much trash in America, I mean, our trash trucks run stronger than our police cars, What's with that?
Yeah, and save the environment. Too much CO2. You need to buy a new iPhone 7. Actually, you need 2. You better go get the new this and the new that. Oh, but save the environment. Oh, no, go buy this. There's 2 for 1 now. Go buy this. All these manufactured products brought in by container from overseas. The message is save the environment, too much CO2. CO2 changes the environment. The sun that drives our climate. And you're trying to scare people over here saying the ice is melting, which it's not, by the way. If you look at NSIDC, all the information they have shows a third amount of ice that's on record since 2007. Not even going back to 2003 or 1998, the third most ice since 2007. So all the forecasts of actually no ice this year coming out, and then the research vessel that got stuck in ice that was trying to investigate and show that there'd be no ice this year, they were delayed by 6 weeks. And then the kicker of it all is now it's the 7th government on our planet to come out and warn the citizens, to tell them you need to stock up with at least 6 weeks of food and water. The United States, Finland, Norway, Denmark, Russia, Czech Republic, Canada, I do believe, was one as well. That would make 6. And Germany, that's the other one. Telling their citizens to come out and stock up on food and water because they know something that is coming that we are not privy to. Having a supply of something ready, either to help yourself or help your neighbors or help others. And I'm totally in the belief if you have the means and ability to help others in these times of need, when the system breaks down, people behave differently. And if they can't get their medications, they're going to behave differently. And if you're really at that point where you have a helping ability, you can be a light giver, not a life giver, but bring light back and bring hope back into these situations where people think it's hopeless. But it's not really. It's all your mind frame about everything.
I think we're in a place, David, where, and I've said this, I'm a very spiritual guy, and just so your listeners know, I used to be a very religious person and I was a pastor and a preacher and so on and so forth, and I'm not now, and there's reasons for that which I will not go into, but I very much call myself a spiritual person, which means that we have a dark and light season coming. We always have, but we're really at a pivotal point right now where I call it they and them. You call it the deceivers. It's the same thing. And these families think that they rule the world. They are playing God. Now, the deception that they have created, and it goes so deep. I mean, it goes deeper than anybody ever thought it would ever go. How they have deceived us to believe certain things. And our belief systems are huge. I'll have people that buy the product and they already believe before they make the purchase, they already believe this product's going to help them. Now, just in truth, just the emotional state will make the product work better. I know it sounds crazy. You're going to say, oh, so your product doesn't work, you have to believe it? No, I'm saying the emotional state, the belief system, we are so strong. I mean, if you back things up, how many people killed another person in the name of God? All the wars, we can go on. Okay, so point being to this is our belief system, they have deceived us so much in our belief system, just like they say, oh yeah, well those are just airline planes that are in the sky and they're just flying back. Oh really? Crossing over each other like that? One over another? Really? You want me to believe that? But as long as their mass media says this, that's fine. So our belief system, there's people who will buy the product and say, oh, the product, I know it's going to work and it helps, and boom, guess what? It really does. It does work. That's a fact. Everybody loves my product because it works. But if somebody is going, nothing works for me, I can't believe it, and then they buy the product, yes, it works, but that person is such I'll call it dark, that it makes it very hard. So we're in a pivotal point where the light is getting ready. It's been shoved down for a very long time. It seems like anybody that's on the spiritual realm, it feels like you're not winning the war. You do. You feel like, God, is the bad guy winning? Is this really true? I mean, are we losing? And it looks and it feels like we're losing. But anytime you think that that's true, then I have a little something for you. Go into a room, shut all your doors, go into the darkest room, closet, whatever you have, and look at the square footage of how much darkness there is. You can't see your hand before your face. And then just take a lighter or a match and light it. And all of that darkness cannot take over the light. So I really believe in the truth of the matter. Whatever's getting ready to happen, it's going to challenge us. It's going to be tough. It really is. It's going to be a tough time. But we, as beings of light, if that's the way you want to walk, we will win. That is going to happen. We will take over the square footage of darkness. That is the way it's going to be. I don't know why I'm saying this, but I guess somebody need to hear this, or I need to hear it. I don't know what it is, David.
Yeah, and I'll go back to, again, in the belief system and the vibrational frequency of your thoughts. And then if you try to bring that into the scientific realm with Nikola Tesla and Marconi and that crew back then, everything is vibration frequency, and all the frequencies create matter. So when you talk about raising state, or, hey, how are you feeling? I'm feeling good. I'm vibrating at a high level.
Yeah.
People that are feeling negative, they're vibrating at a lower frequency, literally. It's almost like a radio station that you can tune into. And when we come into this point, when people are looking hopeless, like, this, maybe the economy is not as good as it is now. The plan breakdown, that's another one of my things, though, that I've gone into a few times, is they can't let 8 billion people truly just migrate around this planet where they want. Once the veil is lifted and they realize the grand solar minimum is going to usher in some epic cooling and we're going to lose crops all over the place. 45 north, basically. 45 degrees north latitude across this planet, and further north to 50 north, 55 north. These areas are going to start going offline probably around 2018. You'll see the beginnings of it already. Yeah. And just really pay attention to the crop yield forecast, because they're always so optimistic in the forecast. But when they really, bring it down and get the chit in the silo and how many tons are booked in there, that's what you want to look at. And it's down. South Africa is down this year, and these are the kind of countries that traditionally going to get cold first because they're so close to the poles. So when we do the same exact thing, you start looking at Russia, you start looking at northern China, and you start looking at North America, and Norway is already down because you just start looking at the periphery northern countries, and there's going to be a lot of economic chaos going on. And my whole thing is they need to usher in a giant stock market collapse
Yep.
to stop
You're
people
dead
from
on.
moving around the planet. But we're so tied to money, and like you said, the belief system. This money is everything these days. So
It
when
is.
people's
People
retirement
people kill
savings get
themselves at
ripped
Wall Street.
out, you're going to have a new way for them to start thinking about life. And if any of us can possibly give them hope, if that's the whole message of this particular talk that we're having, is there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be seriously psychologically distressed during this time. And if
Yes.
you can do anything to raise their vibration, to get them into a higher frequency so that they can be a help, not a hindrance, that would be my message for this whole video or this talk we're having.
Well, I think another thing too, David, and I'm going to speak from my heart here. I said earlier in the show that, I jacked myself up with all my Coca-Cola and my sweets and my greasy burgers and everything else. And that was at a time, 20 plus years ago, that was at a time where a greasy burger still had some nutrients in it. Now it's been jacked up. So I've had to pay the piper physically in my body. I've had to pay the piper for that. I have issues with my body, and I'm turning the page. But when you do 4 years of damage, and then all of a sudden go, okay, I want a week to be fully healed. You're smoking something, and it's good stuff. Because that's not how it's going to work. You do 40 years of damage, and all of a sudden you start doing the right. You do supplements, you eat right, you exercise. You can turn things around, but it's not going to happen in a week. It's not going to happen in a month. So I've been paying the piper, and in fact, I want to share this. I had an issue with high blood pressure about 6 months ago, and I was running about 160, 170 over 80. 85, something like that. And so it wasn't off the charts or anything, but definitely high blood pressure, or considered elevated. I call it super elevated. And they're like wanting to get me on these different drugs. And I'm like, okay, so I tried a couple, and I was really against it, but I tried a couple. I'm not a drug guy. And man, talk about jacking you up. Oh my God, I thought I was going to die. I was shaking, and I was doing all kinds of weird stuff. And luckily, I went to a doctor in California, and she was a surfer. And she told my wife, I was like, oh, take me to emergency. I was shaking and weird convulsions, weird stuff. And she goes, his vitals are good. He's actually a strong guy. And so I think he's on some drugs that he hasn't been on before, and he's just reacting. So she told my wife in private when I walked out to the truck, and she said, you know what? He needs to meditate. He really needs to meditate. It would really help him. God love that woman, because that was exactly what needed to be. And where I'm going with this is I use natural products. I have something called Allison C, or Ali-C is what we call it. And I literally started taking that for 45 days. I took a pill a day, and I'm on other supplements as well. I'll tell you right now, David, my blood pressure 112 over 74. Which is normal. So no drugs, just supplements and being diligent. And then I can tell you about all kinds of different things that, and what we do is we put information on our supplements on the website, getthetea.com. And we put everything there so you can read about it. So you don't have to just go, okay, here's this. And we just say, this is what this product is, and here's what it's been known to do. And we do that so that people can figure out, and it's your body. It's not the healthcare systems. They make it sound like your body is their body. It's not true. It's your body. So you need to be making the decisions. And I love to get behind people like David Devine that's out there, warning the people and sharing with the people what's going on, and especially with weather. I have such a huge heart for the weather and for these trails that they've renamed. And you may be thinking conspiracy and, oh yeah, these guys, what are they talking about? You'll never hear that on a major network. Yeah, you're right. But the major networks even have a name for what I call they and them. They call them now, and this is just, I've heard this over the past year, so this is something new. So this means they and them are stepping forward even farther to get right in your face to say, look, we own you, not the president, not the kings. We own you. Understand this. And they call themselves now on major mass media. You can hear Sean Hannity talk about it, Glenn Beck talk about it. You can hear about all the majors say this word, and they call themselves the establishment. What the hell does that mean? Establishment. What does that
surf,
mean?
now pay your CO2 tax.
Exactly. So this is something where I just go, okay, now they've made a step forward to say, look, we own you. We are number one. You will serve us, not the president. You will not serve Congress. You will not serve the Senate. Your thoughts are not our thoughts. And what does that mean? They're considering themselves a god. Now, they're a demigod, but they're a god. And this is where we as people forget that we have the power. So we need to get in there and we need to go, hey, this healthcare system, it's not for me, or maybe it is for you, and that's fine. But I do find it interesting, David, this is a fact too, is when you go back into the teens and the 20s of this century, you'll find that most of the pharmaceuticals, not all of them, but most of the pharmaceuticals were plant-based. Now they're all synthetic. Now, what does that mean?
If you could talk to everybody listening right now, let's say that the supply and delivery does break down. What are, say, your top 5? Because you mentioned cinnamon, and I'm a real big fan of turmeric. What are some others that you would consider top ones to have around to keep your general health going?
General health. There's nothing. Okay, the tea, number one. That would be number one on my list. Number 2 on the list would be the Ali C. Okay, Ali C. In fact, it's out of stock actually right now. I hate to tell you that, but it's out of stock. But we'll be getting it in probably in about 4 or 5 days. And the reason it's out of stock is because it was such, as soon as I talked about it, everybody goes, oh, I got to have that. But Ali C is the killer. It's equal, one pill is equal to 34 to 40 cloves of garlic. There is no stench. It doesn't leak out your skin, no smell. You're good to go. And what it does is it hates viruses, it hates bacteria, it hates cancer. I mean, it goes after everything, what I call intruders in your body. And it goes after it. So Ali C would be number 2 product, I'd say, that you definitely want in your cupboard. The other one, too, that to me is a real powerful tool is colostrum. And colostrum, obviously, is the first milk of the mother. And a lot of us baby boomers didn't get it because at the time, government was pushing Infamil and all this stuff that for baby foods that basically they push these. So instead of the breast, we got this formula. Yeah, a formula. It was a formula, all right. Let me tell you something. It's like Frankenstein. So we had this formula instead of we having the colostrum, mother's first milk, and that way the mothers could go out and work and blah, 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 and then started a whole new thing I won't go into. But because of that, you'll find that the baby boomers that had Generation X, whatever, that had the formula right now have autoimmune disease. Diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Many of these things are autoimmune disease. Your GI tract's checked up. So when you drink the colostrum, this is colostrum from organic fed cows, and we have this colostrum that literally, and I know this personally because my stomach was jacked up. A lot of you might be gluten intolerant, lactose intolerant. We can go on and on. Colostrum, if you're lactose intolerant, there's only like 1% of lactose in the colostrum, so you're probably good. Unless you just really have a super sensitivity, then I'd say no. But this thing will, for those of you that have leaky gut syndrome, you have Crohn's disease, colitis, all this stuff, this is something where you will actually see a major change by taking the colostrum. And it's like a 45-day supply. And I tell you the bag, not the pills, because the bag is the way to go. You do 3 tablespoons and boom. So there's a major product. And then pine bark, moringa.
Could I jump in for a second?
You jump in. Jump.
Alkalinity of the body, because a lot of the foods that we're eating, what you were mentioning about earlier, is all about the acidic end of everything. So what happens when we change the pH balance of the body? That goes right along with the colostrum as well. Taking a little bit of baking soda and water, specifically those diseases you were mentioning, is because there's an imbalance in the acidity and the alkalinity in the blood itself.
Yeah. Yes. You get your alkaline good and things start changing. And a lot of these products will help bring you into balance. Like I said, trace minerals, we're kind of deficient on that. People, if you are diabetes and you're on metformin, you're probably, and you can check, but I'm not a doctor, but you can check, you probably B12 deficient. So I try and we do a lot of formulation in our company. I try very hard to go after we'll call them problem childs, And I go after that and try to present something that will change that. Like, for instance, when I was on the Ali-C, 45 days, my blood pressure is beautiful. I went to my doctor when I had blood work, and I have a great doctor, by the way. It's, she knows that you're not going to give me pharmaceuticals unless I have to have it. So she basically said, your triglycerides are a little high, Ronnie. In fact, they're a lot high, and it's very scary for you, blah, blah, blah. I took my triglycerides down by 25% in a month and a half, 2 months. And she was blown away. She was like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? These are neat things that we can do. And again, I'm not a doctor. And if you want to, consult your doctor. But you will find, and this is one of the things I would say, when you have your doctor and let's say you have a disease or something, you have something wrong with you, whatever it is, ask your doctor when he or she prescribes to you the product. Ask them how long you need to take that before you're healed, before you're cured. You can use those 2 words, and see what their facial expressions are. Because the fact is, you will take those drugs the rest of your life. And that is something, for instance, my blood pressure right now is beautifully normal. So I take the Ali-C and I continue it, not because I got to keep that, you're always fighting something, but I'm totally normal. But it also is doing other things. So it's also taking my triglycerides down. It's also moving my cholesterol down. So this is something I want to take, but I don't have to take high blood pressure medicine. I'm totally fine. You could take me into a hospital and they go, oh yeah, 112 over 73, you're good to go. So this is something that we can do things naturally. I think God has given us plants, and if we use them right, we don't go crazy and do weird things, we can bring everything right into balance, and that's what it's all about.
I do believe you're right. And at the same time, when I was talking about some of the breakdowns in this just-in-time delivery system based on credit, if there is another collapse coming, which a lot of people are forecasting, a lot of well-known, well-respected economists across the planet are just warning, hey, this is happening, look for this, and there could be another breakdown. And when this happens, there's going to be a complete lockup in the just-in-time delivery system based on that instant credit that's available. And that is going to affect, I do believe, medicine deliveries into the pharmaceutical stores or just your Rite Aid or whatever place you're going, and the food delivery system itself.
Yep.
The things we need to, for clothing and whatnot, that's already in the store, so that's going to be there. But these instant things that are consumables that people need, when's the last time you didn't eat for 5 days or 4 days or even 3 days? Some things we need right away, but there's going to be breakdowns in systems completely plant-wide. And it's all going to be planned, by the way. It's not going to be just some random happenstance where Deutsche Bank, that'll be the first bank that fails, and then Citibank will follow that, from what I've been told myself. This chaos that's about to ensue is the order of people that you're talking about that consider themselves the overseers. I consider myself a sentient being. I don't bow to them. I am a sentient being on this planet. I do not accept their rule. This is an organized chaos of the financial system to lock people down. They know the cooling's coming. They know there's going to be food riots. And it's not because there's so much of shortages, but they just know human nature. And they know how to push the buttons to get human nature to flare and do what it does best for the survival mechanism. When this all happens, they're trying to prevent movement around this planet. Financial things happen. Please prepare yourselves and know that it's happening. And you're going to need to, get that food and get that water and get these types of things to keep your body healthy and ready, because if you're not healthy and functioning at 100%, you're a hindrance instead of helping the overall community for survival at that point.
Well, and I think there's a couple things to realize, too, that I really want to put forward here. Number one, would you like to have a wheelbarrow full of gold or a wheelbarrow full of good food or supplements? And which one's going to make you live longer, okay? And because somebody, you say, oh, well, if I had a wheelbarrow full of gold, I could go buy all those things. But if somebody else has that wheelbarrow full of supplements and food, do you think they're going to trade for your gold in a bad time? No. They're going to say, I've got this, I'm not selling it. No way. That's how it's going to be. So there's that to think about. There's something else to think about, too, is I always think that movies are created for the bad guy, which I will call they and them, to tell you what they're going to do to you. This is what's going to happen. And I remember the second Batman movie with the Chris Nolan movies. And basically, the Joker set it up to where the prisoners could blow up a ship full of people, and the ship full of people could blow up a ship full of prisoners. And he was betting that one of them would blow the other one up. But they didn't. Now I'll go to a real story. Real story, I think it's somewhere around 10 years ago, reported about 5 states without power. Okay? 0 power. It was a whole grid went off. And they and them, I think, orchestrated it. And they were expecting riots and looting and all this stuff. And what happened is people pulled together. And pretty soon the power came on. So I don't know how long they were, a day or two or whatever. And it was really cold and people were freezing, but everybody pulled together. This is what they and them don't understand, is that light pulling together, okay? And again, David was talking about this too. You have food or you have supplements or whatever, and it gets really bad, and you're able to share that with your neighbors. Very, very important, because people don't realize the energy of giving. There is an energy that is released when you give. And so when we're for somebody else, things happen, and they and them don't understand that. They literally don't get it. So they just sit there and they go, why are these people helping them each other? You know, why are they helping their neighbor? That shouldn't be. That's how they think. So I think, you know, in this time coming up, there is going to be financial collapse. There is going to be a lot of these things. But I also think it's the time that people like you and I and many others that are going to shine. And it's actually going to be a good time. It's going to be a time where we pull together, where we know our neighbor, and where we come against the bad guy, not in riots and guns and all this stuff, but we don't obey their law. And you made a comment earlier, David, about I'm not going to bow to them. And I agree with that. It's like, you know, the doctor says you have 6 months to live, and people most of the time go, okay, and 6 months later they die. Why? Because they accepted that. We don't have to accept that. Doctor says you have 6 months to live. You say, are you God? You know? Well, that's what this disease will do. Everybody's different. You know, what tea does for one person, tea will do something totally different for another person. So our bodies are different. That is a fact. So you can't just put a stamp and say, this is the way it's going to be. I know people that said, oh, you had 6 months to live, and they're a cancer patient, and they lived 12 years. The doctor's wrong. They're not always right. That's why they call it a practice. So we have some things there in the works. And I do, David, I thank you for doing what you do and sharing with the people the truth about the weather. I'm behind you. And, you know, Life Change Tea is behind you, and we want to support your efforts.
Thank you. I'll wrap up with one last thought here. You know, it is a free will universe that we live in. And when you're talking about people accepting their fate or choosing a different route, that is their own choice. And being a free will zone, if you will, or in this free will sphere that we live on this beautiful earth, you know, you're able to choose and do what you want, create what you want. You don't have to accept what's been given to you. You're allowed to make different choices. You can manifest. You can create on your own at any time. And when we go into these times, like you said, I think we're going into a golden age where people are going to pull together. I think there's more good in the humankind than there is negative. Almost all this hate that we are experiencing on this planet is from, you know, the news outlets to get us to hate each other. Invariably,
Correct.
We just don't hate each other. This is a news-fed, fake hate fest that's going on out there. You know, these wars that start, they're all false. They're all fake. People don't want to kill each other. That is not true. I've been to a lot of countries, you know, not saying that I travel, but I've been to a few places, and people invariably, I don't care if it's the Middle East, South Africa, Africa in general, Central America, Mexico, over here in Asia, whatever, people are all the same. The average person on the street walking around, they do not want to harm you. They are there just to, you know, try to find out more what you're about, and you can exchange experiences with them. But when it comes down to this, where we need to help each other in communities, and that's my main message of it, when it comes down, you are going to have to rely on your communities together. Not in cities of 4 million people or 8 million or someplace like Chongqing with 30 million people over in China. And we're going to have to come back into our local communities again. Could be a neighborhood, could be 5, 6 neighborhoods coming together. Could be just the neighbors around you that form that first pivotal kind of nuclei seed that get the ball rolling. But whatever happens, I do believe we're going to come together, and it's our choice. That power is with the people. We just get swayed by the media so much, but imagine if we flipped it the other way and we all chose to not accept what the media is telling us, and we all chose to go our same direction to help one another instead of being fed this garbage through the media. If thought creates reality, and imagine if 51% of the people on this planet thought in an entirely different way, all with the same thought of peace, harmony, love, cooperation, could we actually affect physical reality around us with that? Because thought creates.
And I believe you could. That's what's important. It's exciting.
That's why there's so much division. They don't want you to get together to create like that. That's why there is so much division, not only amongst similar races on socioeconomic strata, the education you have, the car you drive, the neighborhood you live in. They divide and divide and divide because they do not want this cohesiveness of the human psyche and the human ability to create, because once we break through that mask of the deceivers, we can come together and actually really manifest and create a new reality on this planet, because it is a free will. It's our choice to do what we want with it, but people just don't know how to use that.
Yep, that's correct.
Well, anyway, I'm going to stop babbling and rambling along there. But anyway, Ronnie, thank you so much for sharing some time with us today. I really believe health is going to be a main issue along with, the food and working together. But I appreciate your thoughts so other people could hear what you had to say as well, and how we all can strengthen ourselves physically and mentally and spiritually.
Thank you for having me on. And again, the website is getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Also, I've got a YouTube channel. It's very small, but it's growing, and it's called Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. And Health Matters Now is just a little blurb to give you some kind of stuff or a product review or something really quick and interesting to say, hey, health is mattering and it needs to matter right now. So, David, thank you so much for everything you do, and keep on doing what you do.